Chapter 6, The Taming. Charlie marks a big red 2 on her calendar for this day, June 11th. She intends to keep track of this process she has named The Taming. She writes the words beneath June on the calendar because she hopes it will be finished by the end of the month. That'll be 19 days, very nearly 3 weeks. She plans to use food and treats to win him over. Every single one of the eagle-leg dogs comes willingly to get a treat. Even Bo, Mrs. Jensen's black lab, who is 18 years old now and has trouble hearing. Lots of the people at the lake take treats for dogs when they go for a walk, even if they don't have dogs themselves. Wild and frightened as Coyote is, Charlie thinks, he is still a dog. Dogs and people go together. By the end of the month, she wants him in her room at night instead of alone in the woods. Whatever people might have done to him before, she'll prove to him she's different. After breakfast, Charlie forces herself to get into Sarita's beat-up old Civic for the drive to the pet store. She still hates getting into cars, hates knowing what awful thing can happen in a car on any ordinary day on any ordinary road. The store is a huge place with whole aisles full of jewel-studded collars and stuffed squeaky toys and even boots and hats and matching jackets. A sign at the front of the store says, "The place for pets and their parents." Parents. So stupid. This is why Charlie doesn't want Coyote to be a pet. Before Paul Morgan left for work, he gave Sarita the rules for this shopping trip, and she walks beside the shopping buggy that Charlie is using like a walker, nodding or shaking her head as Charlie finds things to put in it. "Dry food only," she says when Charlie stops by the brand of canned food Mrs. Davis gives Sadie. "Your father says if the dog is starving, he'll appreciate anything he gets, and there's no need to spend a fortune." Charlie sighs and moves on toward the aisle with the dry food. She tries to tell from Sarita's expression what she thinks of giving Coyote only dry food, but Sarita's face could be a mahogany mask, it's so still and steady. She knows the woman must have opinions of her own. She's too tough not to, but most of the time it's impossible to know what they are. When Sarita doesn't agree with one of Paul Morgan's orders, her mouth might twitch a little or something might flash in her eyes, but nothing more. She's exactly the kind of live-in housekeeper/babysitter any father would want when he is suddenly left to raise a daughter on his own. He writes her paycheck, and she does and says whatever he wants her to. Charlie pulls a 10-pound bag of food off a shelf. Sarita hasn't said what she thinks about the taming. Charlie doesn't even know if Sarita likes dogs. Charlie chooses 2 heavy dishes, one for food and one for water, and a bag of little colored bone-shaped dog biscuits for treats. She isn't sure what size collar to get, so she finds a lightweight nylon one that can be adjusted, and a nylon leash to go with it. She doesn't expect to use the leash a lot. After all, Coyote will live at Eagle Lake, where nearly every dog runs free. She chooses green for collar and leash. Green, she thinks, will look good against Coyote's red gold coat. "Don't forget the training books," Sarita tells her when she has everything else in the buggy. "Your father expects you to do this right." Choosing books takes the longest. There are plenty to choose from, but none of them seems to have what Charlie needs. They're about training, not taming. Finally, she picks 2, but she doesn't expect them to be much use. It is afternoon now, and Charlie is on the woods trail on her way to get Sadie and Coyote. She is wearing jeans to keep the poison ivy off, and hiking boots to keep her from twisting her ankle and wrenching her knee on the uneven ground. The boots aren't working, and it is very much too hot for jeans. It would be better to walk earlier in the day before it gets this hot, but the training books say dogs need routine. Her leg isn't handling the walk today any better than it did yesterday. It isn't just the heat and pain that make the walk miserable this time, though. She must be the first person to come this way today. She keeps walking into lines of spider webs strung across the trail. They are invisible until the sticky filaments are all over her bare arms, or worse, all over her face. She keeps having to wipe them off her cheeks, her forehead, her hair. Sometimes there are spiders, too. Tiny, black and white, spiky, triangular spiders that drop onto her shoulders and run down her arms. She is just thinking it might be better to walk the long way around on the road. It's too wide for spider webs, and when she remembers that since she has to walk the dogs on the woods trail, if she doesn't smack into the webs on the way over, she'll just smack into them on the way back. Spider stick. It's her mother's voice in her head again. Of course, her mother used spider sticks to catch webs on the trail. She showed Charlie a bush called Russian olive with brittle, easy-to-break branches. Her mother would hold one in front of her as she walked, and the webs would get tangled on the leafy branch, spiders and all. A moment later, Charlie is walking the trail, safe from webs, peering through the silvery-backed leaves of a spider stick. She pushes away the memory of the walking trail with her mother and focuses on Coyote. Where is he now? She fills her mind with the image she had of him last night under his tree. He comes and goes, Mrs. Davis said when Charlie called to get permission to keep walking Sadie around the lake every day. The image feels real. It's so clear. He is there, she thinks. He is. She's wearing a waist pack for supplies for the taming, dog biscuits and a small makeup mirror. Charlie is proud of coming up with this idea. The mirror will let her watch him behind her without turning around and scaring him off. As much as her leg is hurting by the time she gets to the hill on the other side of Hawk Pond, she has only had to rest twice this time. She stops among the kudzu vines halfway up the hill and puts her little fingers in her mouth and whistles, loud and sharp, the way her father taught her. She wants Coyote to associate the whistle with her, and her with food. When she gets to the top of the hill and drops the spider stick at the side of the trail, Sadie is trotting toward her on the road. Together, Sadie frisking alongside, they head for the Davises' yard. Coyote is where she imagined him, ears pricked toward her. There is something incredibly alert in the way he sits, as if every cell in his body is aware of her, watching her. Hi, Coyote, she calls to him. He doesn't so much as twitch an ear, but he has heard her. He understands about his name, she thinks. He understood since she first thought it at him. She takes a biscuit out of her waist pack. I brought you something. Before she has a chance to hold the biscuit out for Coyote to see, Sadie has jumped up and snatched it out of her hand. No, 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 she yells. But Sadie has already swallowed the biscuit and is bouncing around her, yelping and sniffing at the waist pack, begging for another. Charlie digs another biscuit out of the pack and throws it as far down the road as she can. Sadie dashes off to get it, and Charlie turns quickly to offer the wild dog another. He isn't there. His place by the tree is empty. Just a patch of smooth red dirt in the midst of the leaf litter and honeysuckle. Sadie is back already, begging for another biscuit. So much for the idea of luring Coyote around the lake with biscuits, Charlie thinks. She'll just have to count on his following Sadie. Come on, dogs, she calls. Let's go for a walk. At the sound of the words, Sadie rushed ahead toward the beginning of the trail, the bush of her tail waving. Charlie follows, willing Coyote to come along. At the bottom of the hill, she looks back to see if he is following and barely catches a glimpse of him as he scoots off the trail. She's forgotten about the mirror. When she is through the poison ivy and nearly to the spillway, she pulls out the mirror and holds it up to her left eye. Coyote's ears and tail up is trotting down the middle of the trail.